What's going on, guys? We are back, and we are talking about the European Major. We know the teams now. What happened last weekend with Vitality taking the win there. Got an itchy eye. So the way seeding works, if you haven't seen my previous videos, and the one video I would recommend you check out is how we get the matchups for Swiss, so you can know why the seeding is important. But one of the other videos was how do we seed in general when it comes to the RLCS X. You could just do it based on the points of RLCS X, but we also wanted to be like, if a team is hot in the grid, we wanted to weight that team effectively, right? So, like a team like Oxygen, we know they're a good team because they beat everyone in the grid. They haven't been doing good in the regionals. Their seeding will get bumped up a little bit because we expect them to do better because it's just what they've been doing throughout this entire season. Also includes a lot of grid tournaments, so we wanted to add that in there just a little bit. So the way it works for seeding is RLCS X points plus 1/3 of your grid points. Now, there is still one more week of the grid, so the maximum point difference you can get there for the 1/3 aspect, 63 and 2/3. That's because the maximum points you can get is 201. The least you can get is 10 as long as you play. So that would be 63.6666666. 7, repeating, yada, yada, yada. It's 190 divided by 3. So, what that means is we can basically get the seeds ready for the major even before that last grid has finished. So, BDS obviously has a pretty big lead when it comes to RLCS X points, but their grid points have not been that great. When they can make it to the semis, they do really well, but it hasn't been great. A lot of quarterfinal losses for them, so their grid points aren't that high. So Vitality can catch them to get that number 1 seed overall. Now, the most important part is BDS and Vitality. They are locked in to a top 2 seed. Right here is our possible seeds that they can possibly get. The reason why that's so important is because when you get into the 2-0 round of Swiss, we seed basically top half versus bottom half of the 4 teams that are 2-0. That means if BDS and Vitality both go 2-0, it's impossible for these 2 teams to play each other, which is a good thing, I would expect, for the 2 top teams in Europe. Last time around in the top 16 of the regional, Top Blokes actually had the number 1 seed coming in there, so that's why there was a chance BDS and Vitality played, and they did. It was a 50-50 shot. So, good news for BDS and Vitality. The possible seeds for them looking great. The only way a number 1 seed versus a 2 seed will matter is if both BDS and Vitality finish 1-1 in round 3 and then win their game and go to round 4 in the 2-1 aspect, because they will get bumped up to the top half of the pool because we take the top seed from the 1-1 pool that just won to pair them against the bottom 1-1 teams, because there's only 2 teams dropping down from the undefeated record. So that's like the only way it matters between a number 1 versus a number 2 seed. In the very first round, in the Swiss, you have top 4 versus bottom 4. It's a random matchup. And then the 2 middle 4 is a random matchup between 5 and 8 and 9 through 12. So that's why in round 1, at least, you want to try and jump up a little bit. And obviously, seeding will matter throughout the day. In round 2, round 3, yada, yada. Round 3 is the only round where seeding actually doesn't matter at all. But you get there by the teams you play in the previous rounds. So let's get back into it in round 5, I guess, as well. It doesn't matter where you're seated at that point. Unless there is no rematches available, then there's a weird thing that we have to do to get the matchups ready. So that does help, because if you are the top seed there, you will play the lowest seed possible at that point if we can't do 3 teams versus 3 teams evenly, because one of the teams in one of the groups played the 3 other teams. So that's the only time that really matters. So let's get back to this, because I'm getting sidetracked. Now you probably don't even have to watch that Swiss video. You probably didn't understand it anyway. So if you do want to know more about it, go check it out. But top 2 seeds locked in, BDS and Vitality. Number 1, number 2. They can flip, but it's unlikely because you need a lot. BDS would have to go out incredibly early, and Vitality would have to win because their difference is pretty extreme. Then Top Blokes, they're locked in at number 3 at 807. Followed by Giants Gaming, who is also locked in with 690.33. No one can catch them, and they can't catch Top Blokes. So we know our top 4 for the Swiss. We know they'll play the bottom 4, but the bottom 4 isn't completely locked just yet. Moving on, Guild is in 5th. So they are a very inconsistent team. We have seen that, but they keep making playoff brackets. So they actually have a ton of RLCS X points. They're number 4 in points above Giants, but a lot of the inconsistency comes out in the grid. So we can see Giants have a huge lead on them in the grid points. So that's why Guild gets jumped down here. Now they can finish 5th all the way down to 7th. And I don't know what that voice was, but all the way down to 7th. It would be very hard for Barca to catch them, but it is possible. So they can go anywhere in those spots, but for the first round, it won't matter too much. They'll still get a random matchup. But in later rounds, it could matter. Now, endpoint, same thing, 5th through 7th. Barca, same thing, 5th through 7th. So those guys are all locked into their little bubble, and they're fighting it out for a higher seed there when it comes to this final grid. Moving on. We got another kind of small bubble, but it kind of breaks towards the bottom here. Galaxy Racer cannot catch up to Barca, so they are sitting in 8th, and they can only do worse. So they can finish all the way down to 10th because of Solary. So Solary would just barely pass them as well. And again, that's in the extreme case of the maximum point difference that we see over here with the 63 and 2/3. So for both Oxygen and Galaxy, they're in the same boat. Like Oxygen's going to need a ton of points to catch up to Galaxy because, again, see how many points Oxygen has in RLCS X. They're actually tied for last in this top 16. But because they have so many points in the grid and they're fighting for that number 1 spot, they're moving up a lot. They're moving up into that middle ground in seeds, which I think makes a lot of sense. You know, top 16 in regionals, but grid, that's been a weekly tournament 9 weeks in a row. And because of how good they are, because even if they were just like, top 4 team and not doing that great, but they're like elevated above where, you know, they're top 2 and there's a big point gap at that point. So that's why they move up so much to 9th right now. But they can get to 8th and they can finish in 10th. Then you got Solary coming in. So they can finish all the way 8th to 14th. They can't get 11, 12, or 13. We'll talk about that in a second. But they can finish 8, 9, 10, or 14th. That's because Dignitas all the way down here, if you see them down here, they can catch up to them in points. Again, it's a pretty big difference, so it would be very difficult, but it is possible. Now, the reason why these look a little bit strange, why the seeding total is not in the exact order, is because Magnifico, Fadeaway, and Barrage, they do not have grid points. So we can't seed them based on the 1/3 grid points rule because I feel like that's just unfair, right? Because they didn't even have a chance to be in the grid, really, outside that one extra qualifier spot. So for them, you go by the RLCS X points only. You sort by that for everyone in this group. And they were 11th, 12th, and 13th. And they are locked into those seeds. They cannot move. Teams with grid points can compare versus other grid teams, and they can flip over. It's like or above them, but say Dignitas was ahead of Solary, they would get 10th. Solary would have to jump all the way down to 14th because, again, those 3 teams are locked. Like, they don't exist, basically, for that. But because of that only 1 point difference or whatever between Dignitas and Solary, between the 2 teams, they actually jump 4 spots because of those 3 teams in the middle. It just happened they were right next to each other in the RLCS X points. So they get 11th, 12th, 13th. Now, for Magnifico and Fadeaway, that's a good sign. They got into the 11th and 12th spot. That means that they will get a random matchup against a 5 through 8 team instead of a 1 through 4 team, which I think most people would agree. You do not want to play these 4 teams who have been consistently dominating Europe. So that's a good sign. For Oxygen, again, 8 through 10, Solary 8 through 14. Moving on to Dig, the reason why Solary can get 14th is because Dignitas can move all the way up to 10th. So just barely. But, obviously, can't do 11, 12, or 13. So they can also finish in their spot 14th or 15th with Triple Trouble because they're right next to them in points. So they can jump a lot. They can either be in that bottom group or that top group. Barrage is the only team, well, them and Libertas are the only 2 teams locked into that bottom group. Then everyone else can move around a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry, and Triple Trouble. My apologies. So it'll be Libertas, Triple Trouble in this bottom group. And Barrage. Now, on the 1 and 2 side, when we talk about round 4, it's actually really important to not have a very low seed as well, because it's the opposite effect how we talked about earlier with the 1 and 1s. If you win, there's 4 teams in that group, but 1 has to jump up, so you take the top seed. Well, it's the same but opposite in the bottom side, where if you lose, there's 4 teams in the 1 and 2, and then there's only 2 teams in the 0 and 2 that came up, so we have to take the lowest seed from the 1 and 2 teams and move them down, which is something you don't want to do. You'd rather probably play one of those 0-2 teams because they were probably worse, and now that they're moving up. So it does matter a lot what seed you get down here. Libertas, though, they are guaranteed that last place seed. Don't have a lot of grid points. Barely had a lot of RLCS X points. I think they were 15th or 14th, I should say. So that's why they are down there. But they can't move anywhere at this point because only 253 in their seed in total. Triple Trouble, they can finish 14th or 15th. They can pass Dig, but they can't catch up here to Solary, just barely. So they will be down in this bottom group, but they can move up at least one seed, which would be nice. And then Dignitas is the only one that can jump up out of this group. And if they jump up, that means Solary is coming down, that they're the only team that Dignitas can catch. They can't catch any of these other guys that we talked about earlier. So, to reiterate real quick, let's talk about round one once again and see what we have. So our top four, completely locked. Our bottom four is pretty much locked, except it could be Dignitas or Solary for that bottom four. That middle four is a little bit different. Fadeaway and Magnifico are tied, but a bunch of teams could finish in the 8th spot. So the 8th and 9th spot is going to be very competitive here. And then when you look at the 5 through 7 or 5 through 8 spots, 3 of those are locked by Guild, Endpoint, and Barca. I don't know why this is still called FC Barcelona. Like Barca, it's Barca Esports now. Come on, Liquipedia. Get with the program. It's been, I think, 3 seasons now? Or at least 2 seasons, I guess. Probably not 3. That's been Barca Esports. Get with the program, Team Liquipedia. Let's go. So we know 3 of them that are locked in 5 through 7. We know all 4 locked in the top 4. And we know 3 of the 4 locked into that bottom 4. And then only 2 we know for sure in this middle ground. My dogs are barking. So that's what we know going in. And once again, seeds will matter not only just round 1, because everyone talks about round 1, but it'll matter in round 2, because round 2, if you win, we just split up the seeds. The top 8 seeds, top 4, bottom 4 match up in the 1-0 round. Same thing on the bottom side. So seeds matter all throughout this tournament. So it's very important to have a better seed, to have a better chance at a better draw. And obviously there's some random elements, but seeding does matter a lot to give yourself the best possible chance to succeed. Once again, the European major, will be a Swiss top 16. We'll get down to our 8 like we always do, then go into the bracket stage. Double the points. What that means, every team here is guaranteed 100 RLCS X points because you start at that 50 mark, and then it'll move up from there. So first place alone gets 702 points. That is more than what Top Blokes has in the entire season, almost as much as what Vitality has in the entire season. It's almost, well, I shouldn't say almost. It's 40% of the entire split is this major. That's how important it is. So this one is worth double compared to everything else. And again, you don't have to worry about at least making it to top 16. You're there, so you get those points. So it's a really, really good sign for these teams. Thinking back to the teams that just barely missed out, like Team Liquid and Train Hard, it's miserable right now because, sure, you were only 10 points away. Now, guaranteed, you're going to be 110 points away from that last spot for top 16, but that's not really what they're looking at. They're looking at top 6, where these teams, like if they make bracket stage, which is what, 150 points, I believe, that's 300 more points at the very least. And obviously, with top 6, you have a good chance that some of these teams get a ton more points there. So they're going to be well behind going into Split 2, and they're going to have a great Split 2 to be in the run-in going into Split 3 for a World Championship spot. So that's where we're at right now. So you guys know the European Major seeding. The European Major begins, I believe it's the Saturday, could be the Sunday. I'm not sure, so bear with me. It would be October 17th or the 18th. I can't remember if it's Saturday or Sunday. And then the 20th. So it would be, if it is Saturday, it would be the October 17th. Then we go to the 24th. So it's the next weekend you play the bracket. If it's the 18th, it'd be the same thing, 18th or 25th. So definitely go check it out. But NA is one of those other days. I just forget which is which. So that's it. That's all I got from you. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.